So thank you. Um, yeah, so I don't need to do many of the welcomes. Mara's already welcomed you, but thanks for coming. So obviously this is the reimagining democracy room. So you might have joined us for our previous session on cooperatives and things like that. So that's really cool. So yeah, welcome to this one. So the title of this session is How England Changes, a Chartist Revolution. And I yeah, I don't know much about the Chartists, so I'm very excited to learn. And I know they're obviously an important part of our history. So yeah, I'm really excited for this one. So yeah, obviously some people are coming from different sessions. There'll be more people joining throughout, which is totally fine. And obviously, many of you are aware of the framing of this. It's about coming together, creating space for us to connect with each other, and having conversations that we want to have, and find collaborators for projects, ideas, things like that. So yeah, do stick around. There's going to be a bit of breakouts, maybe later, maybe not, depending on how many people come. Yeah, there's also an open space where you can engage with some of the speakers, things like that. And this festival is about being inspired, ongoing learning, and continuing political education and connecting the dots. So yeah. So as you might have noticed, this session is going to be recorded. So if you don't want to appear, just you don't have to speak. And also breakout groups are not recorded either, so you don't have to worry about that. Yeah, so our speaker today is Mara Livermore, so co-lead of Our House. Mara is, like I said, co-lead of Our House and an experienced writer, researcher, and deliberative workshop facilitator. And she brings her experience in citizens' juries and participatory democracy, covering climate change, air quality, community safety, and the UK's first heritage sector citizens' jury for Birmingham Museums Trust. Oh, that's pretty cool. Yeah. And her experience covers democracy, entrepreneurship, African traditional religions, and personal empowerment. And her work's been shared by institutions such as the British Academy and Stylist magazine. So yeah, thank you so much for coming, Mara. I'm looking forward to this, and thanks for attending, everybody. Raquel's just put a reminder about the nature of this space and this agreement. So hopefully this goes without saying, but it's always useful to say anyway. So do engage in that respectful manner, and do feel free to use the chat throughout the meeting. I'm going to pass over to you, Mara. Yeah, thank you very much.
Great, thank you. That was such a wonderful introduction as well. I didn't know what had been written and I didn't write it. And actually, I might never write. I might get Matt might have to write all of my intros from now on because I was like, oh, is that me? Wow, she sounds kind of cool. So that's really, really lovely. Thank you. Thank you so much. And it kind of speaks to the heart of like why I'm here, why Our House wanted someone to be here, and why I think maybe other people are here as well, which is that like there's stuff that you can do in community. This will be a theme throughout the entire thing, but there's stuff that you can do in community and ways that things happen that just aren't the same if you're doing it alone. And based on the other talks that I've seen, even like just listed on the agenda, that's also like a common thread that like we can still be stronger together. So yes, my name is Mara, and I am co-lead storytelling and strategy at Our House, and that is one of those titles that actually we kind of just had to put things on it. And I do have a particular slant in life, but the job title says a lot and says little as well. Also because Our House is a very collaborative and participatory place to work. No surprise because we're all participatory facilitators in one way or another. The co-lead part is really a lived thing about how we collaborate and make decisions and that kind of thing. So someone asked me last week, like, how did you get to be about particularly the Birmingham Museum's work? How did you get to be doing that? And so, yes, as it was covered in my bio, I am a participatory democracy facilitator. And that means that I help design and build and facilitate spaces where people come together to make decisions, and particularly people who should be closer to should be closer to the decision making nexus, but are not currently. So it's also about bringing people closer to power and closer to the heart of the organizations that are meant to serve them. And so as well as that, my background is in facilitation, in entrepreneurship, and other kinds of creative practices. And when I started my business, it was actually a little bit of a happy accident that I started doing a part-time gig for Shared Future, with whom I do citizens' juries and assemblies. And that has just blossomed into something that I'm really, really interested in. I would say that my previous orientation was a bit more geared towards supporting people rather than dealing with systems and institutions. I found them a bit scary. I found that they could sometimes be hostile environments. I hated the way that, like, what people said wasn't always what was meant, and that institutions would have a way of doing things that wasn't always articulated. And that is like my nightmare fuel, basically. So I've been really fortunate to find a space and an environment that works for me. And also, as was said in the bio, my other interests span a lot of Indigenous ancestral practices. And I'm curious in particular about, often we think that we approach making things better like building a new wheel. And there's often a lot in history, especially when we take global histories and collective histories, there's often a lot that what's happened already can offer, even if it's just, well, yeah, we don't want to repeat those mistakes. So that is a bit about me. And I like to share, I'm really grateful that Matt wrote such an incredible bio, because I think it's really important. One of the problems that I see is that politics essentially is supposed to be who gets to do what with what. But the issue, one of the issues that I see is that it isn't clear exactly who the who is. So that's why I like to share a little bit about some of my additional contexts, how I got into the space, what else I like to do, so that if you're like, oh, actually, this is not for me and I hate it, you can pass, or you have the information to understand that actually that might be me and my particular approach rather than the actual thing. And so I think about it like a kind of chef's metaphor, really, which is that in essence, there's nothing, despite, and I was in this camp as well, so many people being completely turned off by the idea of politics and like feeling completely unable to connect with the idea of democracy. Actually, in essence, they are kind of, if they were on a plate and it was a meal, they have nutritional value, really. The problem is that we don't like the chefs. We can't see what they're doing. The chefs are maybe using ingredients that we don't trust. And the franchise owner who lives a million miles away and just comes once a week to collect money is making too many decisions about what you get to put in your mouth. So yeah, I like to break it down like that. And so, yeah, if there was Katie or Ollie or any of the other team at our house delivering this, you would get a bit of a different flavor. And so this is from an ONS study, and I think people can be quite well aware that whatever angle is like the closest to your heart, that could be things from, like, we work with people who it's maybe like social disconnection, it's food prices, it's housing quality. There's like so many different issues. One of the ones that's at the heart of it is that people do not trust, 88% of people, according to this study, do not trust political parties. And we're seeing that reflected at the in so many different places and in so many different places in society. And that a lot of people agree or can see that there's a kind of stretch towards these extremes, kind of driven by all the different things that we can see. And so actually, I think that there's probably a real diversity of reasons why people are in the room today, why people seeing the diversity of talks that Rev 21 is offering speaks to that as well. This isn't a like one problem, one solution kind of thing, but I think it requires like a web of collective activity to come together to tackle it. But one thing that I hope we can all agree on is that authoritarianism and the kind of extremes that society is trying to push towards, especially extremes of extraction, are no good for any of us. And actually, the more in common, I don't know if they're a company, but more in common, have done some research and some political categorization of people. And one of the things from their research that came out is that actually access to nature is a popular policy right across the board. And so even across like political or ideological divides, environmental progress is something that we could all be thinking about and caring about. And that is something that drives us at Our House. So Our House is a movement for people-powered democracy working to shape a fairer country for all. And it's for all the people who may have lost faith in politics, but not in each other. I came to Our House 1 year, 9 months ago, roughly, and I came because a colleague in Citizens, Juries and Assemblies invited me. And honestly, at the time, I was the kind of person, despite having worked in participatory democracy for over 6 years at that point, when people said democracy to me, I was like, oh, I don't know if I care about democracy as a system. I'm here because I care about people. I care about empowerment and that kind of thing. But actually joining Our House and getting a bit of an education in these things, and also, I guess, meeting people who break it down in a way that's great and accessible, reminded me that it is democracy, that there is space for me and my needs and my desires and the things that I want to change in democracy as well. And so at Our House, we have been, in the last couple of weeks, we've been in Cardiff, we've been in Nottingham, we're going to in Birmingham, where I'm from, going up to Manchester soon, working with communities and offering them a little bit of a bridge. And in that bridge, I mean that there are so many great people out there on the front lines solving the problems that they can see, whether that is making sure that people have food, making sure that families, like children, have nappies, making sure that arguing or campaigning or petitioning or organizing around, like all these different factors that are about having a dignity in life or a dignity of work and some like respect and a way of living in society that is at least moderately dignified. All those people are doing that great work, but where it can get lost is that funding systems and societal structures like to pit campaigns against each other. So there's only a certain pot of money and everybody's applying for the same thing, and the idea is that not everybody can have what they need. We don't think that's true, also because underneath all of the individual issues that people are campaigning on, there is the system that is creating the problems that is allowing these problems to arise out of it. And Our House and Charters, we're like kind of supporting people who want to get into articulating their problem in a frame that speaks to that underlying system and that the kind of political system can actually change towards. And so this is some language from some of the communities that we've worked with and that we've been a part of. And we're definitely not reinventing the wheel, and we're definitely big collaborators with different people in different places. And it's really important to us that we're like learning and iterating. So I'll be really keen. I hope people reach out at the end to tell me what they thought and also to get in touch and to stay in touch with us. And a little bit about our team. So I work with Ollie Whittington, who is a specialist in participatory design and also the kindest human. I work with Katie Rubin, who is a specialist in legislative theatre and also like, not to say that all the rest aren't powerful, but she's got some punch. So she's a powerful human. There is me, and I like to think that I'm a creative human. And there is Kendall, who is just so is just incredible at digital operations and organizations. And actually, I didn't trust my slide skills to do them justice, but we've also recruited a few new people as well. So the team has grown slightly too. And Yeah, my experience at our house and my experience in working in participatory democracy, I was already always the person that kind of believed and kind of always had hope in people, thinking that actually, if you gave people a chance and you gave people a shot and you gave them the support and maybe the money and the things that they were asking for, they would give, collaborating or problem solving or being creative a fair shot. And then I got into working in participatory democracy and I saw that every single time. Every single citizens jury is set up to recruit a randomly selected group of people that reflects as closely as possible, or as closely as is helpful, the community which the question is meant to serve. So if it's Wandsworth Council, the room of 25 to 35 or 60 or 80 people should look like if you walked around Wandsworth for an hour, you would see the same kinds of people. If it's roughly equal male and female, the room will be roughly equal male and female as well. And so I've spent the last 6 years turning up for work and seeing a room of strangers and like kind of looking at each other over cups of tea, looking at me thinking, who's this lady and what's she going to ask for me? And each time I've seen people come together and collaborate and work, and always a handful of people go on to like continue making moves in that area and making moves in their own life in a way that is really impressive. And so I back this from my personal experience that actually there are still quite high levels of trust that we have in each other. But the unmet needs and the unheard emotions are real. So there's so many different issues. How do we all get on the same page? And one example of this, our house example, is we're working with charters. So a charter, as like formally defined, is a formal document that establishes the rights, aims, or principles of an organization, city, or body, often granted by a government or sovereign. And there are examples of this. And I'm actually sure that some people in the room are going to be experts on what the Magna Carta is, what the Charter of the Forest is, etc. So forgive me, I'm not going to try to give everybody the 101, but I will touch on a few highlights that I think are important for how we think about moving forward and how it underpins the work at our house, which is that power has historically been hard to access. And these examples of charters, the Magna Carta was a royal charter granting but it only really granted rights to other people quite close to the center of power. But by the time you get to the Charter of the 1800s, this is one really significant charter in the movement for workers' rights. So the conditions were terrible, might sound familiar, in that rents were rising, the costs of food was rising, the quality of air in places like London and Manchester were decreasing, and the way people understood like the kinds of work that people did, like skilled workers, like tailors, like bootmakers, for example, were their labor was being devalued basically. And so, but at the same time, those people, because they had like enough of the material resources, enough of an understanding of the world, and enough of the will, really, they came together, various people came together to build a movement that would change not just the air quality, not just their workers' rights, but the system. They understood that it wasn't, that those issues that they were feeling were the symptoms, and what was wrong was the cause. And so the final charter had 6 demands, and they included things like universal suffrage, ballots being secret, removing the property qualification, and payment for MPs. And these are things that we now take for granted as the kind of root of our democracy. And actually, I think it's interesting that a lot of people talk about these revolutions, especially the Charter of the 1800s, the Workers' Charter. They talk about it as a failure because in that generation, in that moment, there were 3 petitions, I'm not going to list the dates, that were delivered. And basically at the time, people were like, no, the people who were holding the power didn't immediately take those on. But what we did see was a massive upswell in the political education and the political activism and the clarity of articulation of what changes needed to happen, that actually all of those things but one, which is the annual parliaments, are now part of our reality. And because of my history also in studying things like the Haitian Revolution, which people also say was a failure, but actually, I think that metric, I'm always a bit suspicious. I'm like, how are we measuring this? Because if we're still talking about it today, if it still had an impact today, then there's a lot of success there that can be celebrated. And this is also what I see in participatory democracy, citizens' juries, people's assemblies, and playing the charter game, which our house has designed and takes on the road, which is that some of the ways that we measure success, like in terms of outputs, in terms of what is delivered, is not always the most important ways, especially when our metrics for success are kind of infused with capitalist norms. But actually, if someone has arrived in that room, as we've seen, I've met people who've come on their own because they were kind of curious, and they've left with a friend or a connection in their local area that they have some affinity with. I've seen people come with loads of people, but like no political education or not really much, and then leave feeling more confident to talk and engage in politics. And I've seen people the other way around, super keen, super engaged in like politics and in the political movement, but maybe a little bit unable to or struggling to connect with people on the different issues that they have, and they've left with that knowledge. And so those might not be things that like someone's going to put a blue plaque on a house for in the future, or there's going to be a national day for something like that. But those are really important. Those are really important wins, and changing the kind of consciousness of the landscape is what meant that we have these rights now. I'm just going to check the chat briefly in case I missed anything. Okay. And then, yeah, so in summary, well, actually, I do see a chat there about trust people with what? Yeah, trust being context dependent is exactly the thing. I think that the trust in like what we're talking about in terms of trust in politics, and going back to the slide where it was like who gets to do what with what, who gets to make what decisions about what things, who gets to access what power, what wealth, or what resources, and how and why, which is the makeup of politics. It's different area. It's not all of those areas all at the same time that people aren't trusting, but the kind of, I think over, especially over the last few years, we've slowly seen like the bottom fall out of different pockets. And first of all, for me, for example, it's been things like seeing social infrastructure go, especially when it comes to like caretaking for children, seeing food quality go down, which is then like a massive kind of interwoven web of issues and things like that. So yeah, we're all seeing things from different issues, and the trust is definitely context dependent. And this is why the kind of central point of a charter, because there's so many different ways to do it, right? The central point of the charter is to have us all singing from the same hymn sheet. If you imagine right now, if you put everybody who was an activist in a football stadium and asked them to yell out what they were campaigning for, they might be calling out better wages or a 4-day working week, and everything would be getting lost in the melee. The charter is basically like helping people get to a football chant, where it's like all of those symptoms will be addressed if we make Parliament 50% mothers. And then because you have now a large section of people saying the same thing because they've come to agree that on the systems change. I don't know. I'm from Birmingham, so I'm close to a few stadiums, and I used to live in Manchester. So sorry for any other football fans, but you can hear this when everyone's singing from the same hymn sheet. You can hear those football stadiums from miles away. So yeah, and you can definitely hear the football fans coming when I used to live in East London as well. So that's yeah, so that's why charters. And these are some example demands from charters that we've done up and down the country. And so I share this so tentatively. I nearly took this slide out because what I didn't want to do was kind of like the whole point is that we're definitely too early in the stage for us to be like really solidifying behind like one particular thing. There is so much more talking, so much more engaging, so much more coming together that we are working with people to do. But to share, there are things, some of the things that I think have been interesting have been replacing the House of Lords with a sortition, so like randomly selected House of Citizens. A demand that's come out of one of the sessions was the idea that there's no political parties at any level except the national. And actually, some of them, other ones have been kind of in that area, but like no political parties full stop, for example. There have been lots of different, I've seen lots of demands and care around like how we take care of children and youth and what political education they should have, what rights to vote they should have, etc. Lots of demands that also incorporate the more than human world. So that's the natural world and thinking about the planet as also a collaborator and friend rather than just something to be extracted from. We have had lots of demands around, especially because the game includes some cards of this. And in particular, there is a civil servants card and an imagination and creative play card. So we often see those two come together in that a lot of people think that some of what we have going on is because there's a crisis of imagination, and that being able to believe and being able to vision in a kind of hopeful way is going to be really, really helpful for, it's going to be really, really helpful for building a fairer society. And lots of demands around themes of community ownership, whether that is water infrastructure, or the last one in Cardiff, there was a community ownership thing around food because food was really high on some people's agenda. And so, there's a real variety and a real diversity, and part of the reason why it works with our house, and I guess our team can approach it this way, is because in participatory democracy, the aim is not to get everybody to vote for red or blue, but to come to a consensus on like maybe why the decision is important or what factors are driving the decision, and then like be able to creatively collaborate on things coming out of that. So, that's the wrong way. So I'm going to check the time and drink a sip of water and check the chat, because it looks like I think soon we'll be able to go into breakout groups. And I would love to know hopefully, feel free to drop in the chat any questions that you have at this point, because I'll be happy to take a look and answer them. But I think what we're going to do now is go into groups and have a go at creating a demand. Now, some of you will be like, I need absolutely no support with this. I know what my demand would be. I'm 100% on, for example, the House of Citizens. That's why I'm in the room today. That's something that I know, like I know what political change I'm campaigning for. What we've been experimenting with at our house and what we've been seeing as we've been playing the game is that there's a real kind of inequity in how comfortable people are to getting to a demand that kind of feels like it's at systems level. And that's because, just like democracy, we don't all have access to systems level thinking in the same way that our families are often often not democratic, our workplaces are often not democratic. And so when you ask people to imagine a democracy, sometimes they struggle. So when actually the backstage wizards put you into breakout groups, I'd love for you to have a chat about whether anything's landed for you, what's brought you into the room, and what your demand might be. And if you would like some prompts with a demand, this is how I like to think of it. The problems that we see can be, as one way of doing it, broken down into who causes it and in what power structure. So, for example, a problem might be that billionaires have too much access to parliament. So for the solution, you could think about kind of mad libbing and swapping either of them out or both of them out, or yeah, you would want to swap at least one of them out. So maybe you want to swap billionaires for mothers, but maybe you agree that the power structure should be the same. And actually, it's you want 50% mothers in parliament. Maybe actually you also want to do a different power structure like community gardens, and actually all decisions should be made outside in nature, etc. And so I'm going to take a look at um, I'm going to take a look at the backstage wizards, Chris and Raquel, to see if we have some rooms set up. And I'm going to take a look at the chat to see if there are any questions about that activity. So you're going into a breakout room, you're going to chat to some strangers, hopefully, and you are going to share a bit about what's brought you into the room today and what your demand might be. And we'll do that for about, in fact, wizards, you can say, how big are the rooms?
It will be with 3 to 4
Five?
people.
3 to 4 people. So let's say like 8 minutes, because then that's about 2 minutes each. So about eight, maybe there'll be 9 minutes. She's a facilitator, not a mathematician. And if there are no questions, which I can't see any, I will see you on the other side in about 8 minutes.
You doing okay joining, Ben? Or do you need a hand? Nope, Ben's. Oh, lovely. There we go. Nice.
Great. So I'll keep a check on time.
Sure. I've realised I've got to go. I'm hosting the next meeting on this one, which is an anarchist constitution. So I'm doing that after. So that starts at 12. So obviously, Mara, you can if people have questions and you want to continue to chat about stuff, you're obviously welcome to continue, to have this room and keep this room. But I've probably got to whiz off at 10 to 12. Oh, I think I'm muted.
I don't even remember when I hit the mute button. I'm so habitually muting myself in Zoom calls that I'm like,
Good Zoom practice. Good Zoom etiquette.
Yeah, good Zoom etiquette. Yeah, no, I am typical facilitator, but I definitely tried to stick to the approximate timings that Matt gave me, which was about 45, 50 minutes. So I think we will be on track
Wonderful.
for that. And there's so much going on as well. I wouldn't want to keep people for a minute longer. But what I am going to do briefly is pause my screen sharing
Sure.
and get to the right slide for next.
Excellent. I was going to take a quick loo break. I'll be back briefly.
Sure.
Yeah, maybe I'll give them like 3-minute warning.
Great.
Yeah, we are on to the last 3 minutes now. I think you muted again.
Can you see the screen that says welcome back?
Yes, I do.
Okay, great.
So last minute left, and then I'll close the rooms.
Great.
Okay, I'm closing the rooms now.
Wonderful.
And they've got a minute to come back. So, yeah. Back on track.
So, welcome back, everybody. It would be so great um if you could drop your if especially some of you, oh, sorry. What are my words? Let me start finding them in my brain. Welcome back. It would be wonderful if you could put a little bit about how that was in the chat. I would love, especially if you had a demand that you discussed in your group, if you could share it in the chat, that would be so great. So, welcome back, everybody. Please drop your demands or feedback, questions, anything into the chat. And it always takes a moment for people to type things out. So, I will fill. And of course, if you had any questions or any reflections, you can drop that in too. But yeah, I'd be really curious to know how that went. The other thing is that if you would like your demands to remain private, I will shortly on the next slide talk about how you can reach out directly to our house to talk to us. Maybe you think you're curious about the game and you would like to know more about that. Maybe you'd like to know when we will be in your area, or you want to bring us to your area, and we would love to talk to you about that. We have some online intro calls where you can discuss with us and get some of your other questions answered. And we're also increasingly on socials, which I have absolutely nothing to do with because my social game is not strong. But we have some great people who are doing things like that. So I can see abolish all student debt and abolish fees for education. Fantastic. Thank you so much. That actually reminds me, I think that actually came up in Cardiff as well. So there are people on your page with that. Media in the UK, nobody can own a media source if they are non-domicile, if they are not living here, and there is a limit on the amount that they can own. That is fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing. Ben Mango says promoting open source tech. Absolutely. I get asked all the time, or not all the time, but increasingly, because a lot of citizens jury stuff, especially if you go on Shared Futures website, Shared Future CIC, you see pictures of citizens juries that we've worked on. There's a lot of paper and post-it notes, and people are like, oh, why don't you use AI to synthesize this and this kind of thing? But a major thing is that like they would have to be open source, because I'm yet to meet someone presenting a solution in the digital space that doesn't run the risk of like having tech be involved in democracy the way that they're involved in our attention. And I'm working on that with my phone. So thank you for sharing that. Duncan says, align local democratic units with watersheds. So align decision-making units with survival support system units. That's so fascinating. Thank you so much. I've been learning a little bit about bioregions, and I think that's a really interesting, and like there's Alex Niven's book, New Model Island, which is also about returning to like a regionality. So I think that I'm seeing affinity towards that as well. Anne is also saying that Anne has an alternative idea for education that pays for itself, which is great. Duncan's also saying 858 campaign. I'm not sure exactly what that means, so you can put some more information in the chat if you would like. And Jill says there would be a new House of the People outside of London, e.g. Leeds. Yes, decentralizing power. And there would be a weighting system in Parliament, e.g. old Etonian low weighting, single mother from working class, high weighting for selection. Amazing. Thank you so much. I'm going to like gesture at the tech wizards because I'm sure that the chat saves as well in the same way, hopefully. Or I think I can also do that, but I definitely want to make sure that I don't lose these. And whenever I watch recordings, I never see the chat, but that's fine. And thank you so much for sharing. I didn't see any other questions go in. 858 campaign is the Sortition Foundation's campaign for House of Citizens in the House of Lords. I see. Yes, I've seen things about the House of Citizens. I did not know it was called the 858 campaign. Don't tell Sortition Foundation because they'll think, Mara, she should know better than that. Letting the side down. Yes, waggy finger, Duncan. Waggy finger indeed. So, what next? I'm a big fan in my daily practice and life of tiny habits. And so I think all mountains are climbed in multiple single steps. All NFL games are yard by yard. Everything happens in millimeters at some times. And so if this has been interesting to you or not, you can have one charter chat. You can, and so that might be with someone who you think might find it interesting, or it might be with your mother, brother, friend, football mate, and just tell someone about coming to Revolution 21 and something that you've heard today. And it doesn't have to be from this chat either as well. Just like, I think it's so important that we keep the conversations going and share in spaces other than like the people who self-select into these rooms. You can also head to ourhouseuk.org to join a charter intro call, or to sign up to our newsletter, or to get more information and to connect with us that way. And if you're like, oh my gosh, I know exactly what I want to do and how I want to build a charter, and my choir, community group, football club, political party, whatever, would love to build a charter, then you can email hello@ourhouseuk.org and maybe put like Rev21 or Mara in the subject line or something. Yeah, say, hey, I was at the event, I'd love to build a charter. How can we connect? And also, see, this is why I'm not in charge of the socials. We are on socials. It is Our House UK __. I will make sure that when I make a little thing with the charter demands on it, I will put the socials on. And if there's an after email, I will make sure that the people who are going to be sharing have our socials. And you will also be able to find the socials via the website. And if you talk to one of the other co-leads, you'll say, yes, you knew exactly what the social handles were. I'm going to have a look at the chat.
I've got a head off, Mara, but do you mind if I put a few links in the chat and do a bit of a round off, and then you can keep the space for anything you want to talk about if anyone wants to chat to you about stuff?
No, so actually that's perfect, because I was just going to say thank you and I'm done. So great.
Okay, cool, wonderful. I wondered, will you be going to the open space after this? There's a bit of an open discussion space where people can chat to people.
I did see that. Yeah, I can do that. I can pop in there for a bit. I'd love to.
Cool, amazing. Cool. Well,
so we'll head over there next.
Yes, please. That would be amazing. Well, can we please give Mara a big round of applause? It's not quite so effective when you can't hear the applause, is it? Still, yeah, hopefully the meaning comes across. So yes, thank you so much, Mara. This is really, really interesting. And I'm really glad I was able to host this one. And yeah, thanks for all the messages in the chat and the thoughts, and for taking part in creating your own charter. So yes, there's a few links here. So there's the upcoming events, so you can check out any more meetings at this festival. There is any more resources from here, and also there's the donations. So the donations will go straight to our speakers and their organisations. So do check out the donations page to support the organisations that are giving these wonderful talks today. So yes, Mara will be in the open space, so do check that out as well. And you can chat to her, have any convos, connect, and ask any questions. Yeah, well, thank you so much again. I really, really appreciate you giving this talk, and I'm sure I'll see more of you in the next meetings.
Yeah, thank you so much, and thank you to everybody for coming. It is no light thing to Saturday morning. There's so many other things that you could do all the time. So I really appreciate the energy of each and every one of you that has come to connect with me. And I'm hoping that I will see some of you again soon. All right. Thank you. Bye.